Hi, welcome back to Bartholomew Town. You're currently a member of the Newport Council, most recent past mayor of Newport, and a candidate in the Democrat primary for lieutenant governor. What's what's it been like on the trail since you've announced? I think we've haven't really checked in since you actually announced and really launched the campaign. So now that things are happening, what's that like?
The trail is terrific. Look, I love running for office in the same way that people who do marathons love running itself. It's a part of the overall exercise, and you better like actually doing it. For me, as somebody whose family came here, my father's a refugee, and so my family moved around lots of different parts of the state. It's been a great reason to get out there, reconnect with people and places that have been formative to who I am as a person. And the reception has been absolutely terrific everywhere we've gone. So we're having fun. We're getting out there and we're listening to people, which is the most important part of the exercise.
Other than geography, biggest difference between running in Newport and running statewide?
You really do spend a whole lot more time in the car, right? So that was one of those things you can't necessarily prepare or build for. I've managed a couple statewide campaigns, so I know the nature of the exercise itself. But being productive with those down periods between stops when you're maybe going from a one socket to a westerly, you've got to be really thoughtful, intentional about. You've also got to be thoughtful about how you schedule your time and where you're going.
Biggest differences you've seen out there in terms of geography from you mentioned westerly, you mentioned Woonsocket. What do you are you feeling kind of a similar energy around the state, or is there any particular area that is right now seems to be, I don't know, more direct in what they need, what they're missing, what they expect? What's it like out there?
Our voters and the population that we're hearing from when we're going out, whether it's to local Democratic city and town committees or visiting community events, is very consistent. People are exceptionally frustrated with the status quo. And that's on both sides of the partisan aisle, right? People just don't feel like government and the elected officials that we have representing us are doing a good job. The deviation from that is that generally speaking, people really like their local legislators, their local council people, their local school committee people. But writ large about the system itself, they are exceptionally frustrated. And so I think that was a great question. I appreciate it.
What's the next step for you here in terms of entering into this? I always picture the summer festival season, what once was just a sea of people with clipboards trying to get signatures for this kind of convoluted system that is it gets very technical right now. So how are you preparing for that process as you head into the hot summer, trying to get people's attention and also trying to just navigate the nature of running for office in real time?
That's a great question, Bill. A lot of this comes down to where you're focusing your time based on who's paying attention at any given point in time. This election cycle feels really late this year. I'm so used to these things being multi year cycles. I remember back in the day when I was managing statewide campaigns, you'd prep up for a campaign 18 months to 2 years ahead of time. We're in the middle of less than 100 days until the primary. And voters are tuning in really late this year. That's what we're finding. So we're spending a bit more time on the front end of the schedule dealing with people who are a bit more engaged early on in the process. These are the folks that are state party committee people, local city and town committees. But as we shift into summer, that becomes much more of a general voter, general population exercise where you're getting out there and you're trying to be seen and meet as many people as possible. Big parades, festivals, community gatherings, also a lot of small backyard house parties, right? This is kind of how it's done here. And that's one of the fun parts.
You recently got the endorsement of the city and town chairs in the Democrat Party. So too did Helena Folks and Keith Hoffman. Pardon me, I'm not. Hoffman did not get that, but Peter Nerona, Attorney General Nerona, recently endorsed Folks, you, and Hoffman in a tweet. So there's definitely a faction of the Democrat Party, for those that pay attention to the nature of the party and the party politics, that is decidedly behind you. For anybody that's not familiar, not a part of that sort of political class, if you will, again, a term I don't like to use, but that's just the reality of the category here. What is the main differentiation between you and Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos?
We're looking at a generational shift. We're also looking at a shift in terms of what we're focused on. I am very focused on the bread and butter issues that are impacting households on a day to day basis, where we believe government can actually have a difference, make a difference. Where I know from my own experience that we're able to have an impact that will deliver and make a difference in the day to day lives of people in our community, particularly the people that make our communities work every single day. We know that healthcare is a big focus, not just the system writ large, but specifically being able to go to a doctor when you need to go to a doctor, right? Nearly 1 in 3 people in the state aren't able to get an appointment with a doctor when they need one. And that is driving up expenses as people instead are going to emergency rooms and urgent care centers. I think that we've got to be training people for jobs that afford the ability to make a middle class living, but also that help us impact some of the societal gaps. Great example of this are the trades. We know that part of why we have a shortage of housing in the state is the high cost of construction, in part driven by the fact that we need more people in the trades. The great news is those are jobs that pay a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. And so we've got to be focusing on how we prepare people for that. And I'm also very forward looking, right? We are distinctly of a new generation. And so therefore, we know that we will have to deal with the consequences of some of these really big picture trends that we're now just starting to feel the impacts of. Things like climate change, things like AI, this chaos that's coming out of Washington right now. Not only do we have to confront those places when those things that are happening aren't what we think is in our best interest, but we've got to have a long term plan how we're going to be able to sustain this fight to make sure life is better for all of us.
Not only are you going to have to be engaged in it's a four-way primary. Look, Sue Anderbois, Cindy Coyne, they're credible candidates. Sue Anderbois, member of the Providence City Council, Cindy Coyne, former member of the legislature and state police officer. But let's face it. I mean, right now, you are indeed I believe, the most significant threat to Lieutenant Governor Matos inside the party. So just for anybody who is maybe not even familiar, doesn't even know who Sabina Matos is right now, in one to 10 words, like what would you say just in terms of philosophically, ideologically, what's the easiest way to kind of separate you two other than generational?
I am objectively focused on delivering results and being held accountable to those results. As somebody who served as mayor of one of the most iconic cities in America, as somebody who chaired the largest drinking water utility in the state, Providence Water, and oversaw its modernization, my public service has been entirely defined by delivering results for people, results that you can point to, that people can understand, that actually have an impact on people's quality of life every single day. As mayor of Newport, I lowered taxes on the middle and working class while increasing investments in infrastructure and education and housing. When I was chair of Providence Water, I just didn't talk about good policies and modernizing the utility. I went out there and actually did it at scale. You know, that entire utility today is powered by renewable energy. That's the result of me being laser focused on delivering results that not only do things like be good for the environment, but also in the instance of Providence Water, it saved our ratepayers nearly $1 million per year. Our policies have to not only make sense of the value set that we have, but they have to boil down to the bottom line for people. Especially right now, we're hearing consistently that they are struggling with the inflation, with the high cost of living, and with just keeping up to make sure they are able to maintain some basic level of a quality life.
All right, and that is, of course, in the Democrat primary that you would have that four-way race. If in fact you're the victor there, you would go on to face John Laughlin, a former state representative and talk show host on WPRO. And look, he's a Republican, most likely will be the nominee. Look, the reason I bring this up is because you've already engaged with him on a press release level. And look, Mr. Laughlin has, throughout the course of the time I've listened to his radio show on occasion, here and there, you happen to be in the car, you turn it on, he'll have an idea that on the surface level, you go, it's interesting. But oftentimes these are headline grabbers. No, look no further than this inspector general nonsense that was put forth. And I think objectively, anybody who looks at it has to understand he had this convoluted idea that you could turn the lieutenant governor's office into an inspector general's office. Now there is an inspector general movement inside the General Assembly. We'll see where all of this goes. You were essentially out front saying, in response to Laughlin's idea there, let's get real. If you're going to have an inspector general, you have to do it properly and have it be an objective individual with the agency, subpoena power, and an investigative experience to be able to do it properly. And now today, we've got a press release from Laughlin. He wants to turn the lieutenant governor's office into, quote, the Overwatch for the Ocean State. It's a plan to transform the lieutenant governor's office into a taxpayer-focused watchdog operation dedicated to exposing fraud, waste, abuse, and government inefficiency, all without increasing spending or creating a new bureaucracy. I wonder if Elon Musk will be there with a chainsaw on day one. Your response to this, let's just call it what it is. This notion of trying to turn the lieutenant governor's office into some kind of opposition slash. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Bartholomew Town is proud to partner with Waterfire. Visit waterfire.org. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. And by the way, join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Bartholomew Town, proud to partner with the University of Rhode Island Online. Are you ready to take the next step in your career? At URI Online, they offer business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, their online programs provide the flexibility you need with a high-quality education you deserve. You're going to learn from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. Bartholomew Town is proud to partner with Newport Film. Visit newportfilm.com. Follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew. Oversight / Doge-like office that Mr. Laughlin has put forth. Is he going to sell Rhode Island on this, do you think?
I want to make two things really clear, right? Not only should we be electing people who are problem solvers, not just entertainers, because we've got enough of those in Washington right now. As Democrats and as people who are reasonable in the Ocean State, we've got to push back on these bad ideas when we hear them. Taking the failed playbook out of Washington, bringing it up here, trying to dress it up as something otherwise, is not saying it's going to work for Rhode Islanders. And we've got to call these things out for the nonsense that they are when we see them. Right? What he's proposing, regardless of what he calls it, is a bootleg version of Doge. Except he's not even hiding behind this concept that he wants to try and save money and fix problems. He wants to create outrage content, clickbait for a podcast and for a newsletter. And while I enjoy a good entertainment as much as anybody else, what we really need right now is a real plan on how we're going to be fixing things. And so it's disappointing when you kind of keep seeing these partisan ideas get hacked up from Washington brought north. And we've got to push back on that nonsense when we see it up here. That's what I've been doing. I've honestly been a little bit shocked and disappointed that my colleagues in the race haven't jumped into that fight, because that is the common problem that we need to be addressing right now, which is pushing back on this chaos coming out of Washington and making sure it doesn't infiltrate us in the Ocean State. Because we've got enough problems as it is solving problems. We don't need somebody else out there throwing haymakers and then going and hiding behind a wall.
Yeah, and it's also just from a pragmatic standpoint. It's not good politics from a healthy politics standpoint to have a lieutenant governor's race that's based on the hypothetical transition of the office into something that's constitutionally not viable and at the end of the day isn't going to serve the people anyway. So with you there all the way. I just want to turn in these last moments to Newport, where you are on the council. You were the mayor. Mayor is elected from the council body. Look, there's a couple of major issues in Newport. I mean, obviously, we could go through housing, we could go through any number of them, but the birthing center and more generally healthcare right now. What is the latest? What are you hearing on the ground as a counselor about the status of the Newport Birthing Center? At last proper report out, if you will, readout, it's going to stay open for a year. This is the birthing center at Newport Hospital was threatened to be closed. There was pushback and action taken to keep it, and it'll now be kept open by Brown Health for another year. But they're also calling for philanthropy to step in to provide well over $1 million in funds to keep this thing open. That was the last we heard from them on an official level that I know of. What are you hearing?
Well, let's start with, in part, why I think the office of lieutenant governor could be so valuable. And that's because of the experience that we've had in Newport, right? The ability to use a bully pulpit and the power of convene to get people together to go out there and push for solutions is very important if you do it right. In this instance, our objective with Brown Health as a community was to say you need to be making sure that you're putting people over profits when it comes to considering whether or not you keep this particular line open or any other service that the hospital is providing to the community. In this instance, we were successful in getting something major from Brown, which is a commitment to keeping that center open on the interim and to working on figuring out a way to make sure it's sustainable in the long term. What we have is a request from Brown for roughly $5 million in additional investment that's needed to keep that birthing center opening at a high quality of service. We know that it rates as one of the highest quality such centers in the area. We know that that is part of what makes Newport a maternity friendly community. So we've got to keep that up. Now, we know about a third of that money has come in so far from the state. Much credit to Governor McKee, but as well as to the legislature for keeping that funding intact. Representative Lauren Carson was a fierce advocate for us to make sure we got that funding, and she delivered. Deserves full credit for making that happen here. Now the exercise turns to what happens with the balance of funding that you need. To what extent should that be coming from philanthropy? To what extent should that come from things like the increased reimbursement that the General Assembly provided in the budget? Those are the open questions right now. But the objective is to make sure it is something that is sustainable into the future. So this isn't an annual fight that this community needs to wage.
What do you suspect right now in terms of if you drive around Newport, you see some signs, save the Newport Birthing Center. What do you suspect, just from an anecdotal standpoint, from being on the council, being on the ground, is the general awareness of the island about the threat to the birthing center? Has this thing been a political news story, or is this thing a major news story that is resonating, that has the chance to really bring community together around an issue, or continue to bring community together around an issue, but on a large scale?
Oh, that's a great point, Bill. And I love that you see the signs in town. A lot of effort from this group called Moms Over Margins went into that great effort. I think it's two things. Look, I think in general, people are really frustrated with institutions across the board right now, whether it's government, whether it's healthcare. They really don't feel like the people that run those organizations are listening to and hearing them and working with enough urgency to solve those problems. To that extent, the birthing center fight really awakened people. It gave them something that they could hold on to, work on, focus on, a place where they could make a difference. Everybody, I think, out of the pandemic took on different passions. Being engaged with government, being engaged with the institutions that impact our lives is something that a lot of people woke up to, that, hey, maybe this should be part of the project. Maybe civics are part of the project I should be engaged with. And they are locked in and very focused on this issue. These groups meet every single week right now. It's a huge coalition of people ranging from labor organizations that help organize nurses to moms in the community to doctors to just community members in general who care about this issue, care about this birthing center, and care about making sure that the people's voice is heard and very clearly understood, that we expect these institutions to put people over profits. And that's important when we're the ones who are paying the bill.
On a similar front, in terms of societal organization and footing the bill, with Newport schools right now, it doesn't look like regionalization is going to happen anytime soon on Aquidneck Island. Your sort of takeaway on where Newport schools are, where the island's future may lie in terms of regionalization as well?
A couple things. First, I think we've got to reconcile with the fact that we are regionalized in a lot of ways. One in four kids in our career and technical programs are coming from outside of Newport. Similarly, we have a large number of out of district placements, which is part of the annual driver of the budget that's very hard to predict and keep a tab on. And so the two communities are collaborating an awful lot. Same thing with after school programs. We saw this with the Learn 365 efforts that we put in with our community learning center, where we try and collaborate and work together where we can. But writ large across the state right now, we are in the midst of an education crisis. Not only do we have systems that aren't delivering what we need to make sure that we've got a workforce that's prepared, or that we're preparing people to live lives that are productive and allow them to earn a middle class livelihood, but we also are getting pushed into a financial death spiral. right? Look at the different city and towns across the state that were facing huge deficits, largely driven by changes in school funding. It's very clear that this state needs to grab the education issue by the horns and wrestle it to the ground, both financially, but also in terms of modernizing our education system to make sure that it's meeting the need we have.
Your take right now, looking at national politics, we had a we're recording this on Monday morning, June 15th. Last night, there was a UFC bout on the lawn of the White House. Um, on one hand, you could say, "Oh, well, that's just entertainment." On the other hand, everybody knows aesthetically what took place on the lawn of the White House. How do you run a campaign on a local level and connect with people when you look at the federal level, never mind policy-wise, but just in terms of that aesthetic? When so many people are looking, literally 6 in 10 Americans are tuning out Trump-related news, and in turn, the trickle-down effect has to be politics on the whole at some level, meaning government on the whole. There has to be a bomb went off, so to speak, that has turned a lot of people away from politics. So with that background, how do you engage with people? I know you're a talented leader. I know you're a talented politician or political figure. I know you're a talented arbiter on the council. But for the average everyday person that's like, man, we're being run by morons. We're being run by morons. How do you connect with that person that has just checked out because they're so disheartened?
That is the theory of the case for why this job. Why this job instead of any other job to run for, instead of staying locally in a community that I love, that has been incredible to me. The theory of the case here is take a job that's been the butt end of a joke for a long time and actually do something with it. Actually show people that if they are willing to engage, that if they are thoughtful about the dialogue that we have around these issues that we all agree need to be fixed, whether it's healthcare or our economy or the housing situation, and we actually use that office to fix and address some of these issues, not just to get people outraged about things, but to actually deliver solutions and improve people's lives, that maybe we start getting back that faith in democracy because we know that whether it's with the satisfaction of the direction that things are going right now in the state, or whether it's people's belief that democracy is still a viable option for us, that it's something that can deliver and make a difference in their lives, that's the goal and the objective. That's why I think most of us are running for office. That's why most of us are serving in office, is to make that case. And we need a new generation of leaders who are able to be articulate and also honest about the challenges that we're facing and our need to band together and focus on them. We spend a lot of time in this state trying to be a miniature version of what Washington does, bickering and arguing amongst one another. When the reality is that this should not be an us versus each other within the state, but an us versus the enormous challenges that our little state is facing, that's part of the broader sea change that we're addressing as a country. And so, whether it's climate change or AI or changes in the economy or the absolute chaos out of the dysfunction that we see in Washington, we've got to band together to cut through that, figure out how we sail our little ship through those violent seas to actually make sure we get through on the other end and are better off.
Xay Khamsyvoravong, Newport councilor, immediate past mayor, running for lieutenant governor of Rhode Island in the Democrat primary. Well, I'm sure we'll talk again before that, but good luck as you're out there.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you having me on.
Our friends at the Coast Guard House have a new summer program starting this Thursday at 3 o'clock, Sound Waves, and it features DJ Dayglow. Bob Leonard from the Coast Guard House and DJ Dayglow join us here to talk about what's happening in Narragansett. Bob, what was the idea behind this?
We wanted to bring entertainment back to the deck. Spinning vinyl records is nostalgic, just like the Coast Guard House is.
It's an interesting parallel, the analog musical performance, sitting by the ocean, kind of slowing down and going back to the roots. Is that the idea here, DJ Dayglow?
That's definitely it. I really love creating intentional spaces with my music. So, really picking records, slowing down, picking music that I think really complements the summer sounds of the Coast Guard House and the beachy vibes. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Bob, I think we got to get one of the sign-offs if you'd be so willing.
See friends, see food, see view. The Coast Guard House restaurant.